Well, good afternoon and welcome to this BBC Facebook Live page. I'm Jonathan Head, I'm the BBC Southeast Asia correspondent, down at the Grand Palace in Bangkok's old historic quarter, where the body of King Bhumibol Adulyadej is lying in state and is being visited by tens of thousands of his subjects, of people who've come here to mourn him, to express their gratitude for his life, an incredibly important figure in this country's modern history. So we're here to take you through what's happening here, to answer your questions too. Do fire questions over to the BBC's Facebook page so that we can address them. I've got with me Eduardo Siani. Now, Eduardo is an anthropologist specializing in Buddhism and politics in Thailand. He's attached to the School of Oriental and African Studies in London, but has lived here for the last 14 years and knows in particular a great deal about rituals, Buddhist rituals, cosmology, all the thinking that goes behind the very elaborate rituals that attend to the King's funeral. But let's just walk a little way with you. We've got on the right here, this is where they're bringing people in steady lines to go into the palace to pay their respects. Ever since the King's body was brought down here on the 14th of October, the day after he died, we've seen people coming down to go through the gates of the palace and sign, basically to pay their respects to a photograph. They're not actually able to go anywhere close to the King's body at the moment, which is lying in state in a coffin behind a traditional Buddhist funerary urn. They will be able to do that over the weekend, and the authorities here are bracing themselves for huge numbers of people coming down here, and you can see some of the preparations that they've made. I'm going to get Danny, my cameraman, just to wheel around a little bit so you can see the gate over there. That's the gate through which people will go. It's the main gate to the Grand Palace. This palace was built in the 18th century by the very first of this current dynasty of kings, the Chakri dynasty, and it was the center of royal power. You can see there are still a few tourists, a lot of people sitting down out of the sun over there, and we will expect other people to come through over the next 20-30 minutes to go into the palace. If Danny moves a little bit over towards the left, you can see those gleaming spires over there. That is the Temple of the Green Buddha, Wat Phra Kaew, a very important and sacred spot for Thais and very important in their history. But let's get back to what we've seen over the last 2 weeks. And Eduardo, I'm going to ask you first. I mean, you've been watching a lot of what's been going on around the palace, the way in which people have been mourning. You're a long-term observer of Thailand. What's been your impression of how Thais have dealt with this enormous historic moment?
Right. Yeah, I think that this is obviously an epochal moment, right? The death of a lot of Thai people have only known Thailand as the reign of King Bhumibol, because King Bhumibol has been on the throne for the past 70 years. So you can imagine how important and of what proportion this event has been for a lot of Thais. And this event has really been so great that the initial reaction I got from a lot of people I've spoken to was a reaction of disbelief. A lot of people use the impression it feels like a dream. So you see, there was this rational, of course, understanding of what happened and recognition of what happened, but emotionally there was a sense of detachment just because the event is so great and so important that will and is already affecting a lot of people's lives and perceptions of the country.
We're getting one comment here from Paul Cox saying the weather is nice. It's very, very hot. In fact, the day that the King's body was brought here, we all had to wait outside. No umbrellas were allowed. We saw people literally keeling over. It's probably about 34, 35 degrees out here in the sun. Eduardo, just give us a sense from people you've spoken to, what King Bhumibol meant to Thai people, why he was so important. I think that's something that people outside often find hard to understand.
Yeah, right. If you allow me just to talk a little bit about Buddhist cosmology in Thailand, the way the cosmos is understood for Thai people is very much like a ladder. There are many stages along this ladder towards purity, towards really the stage of the Buddha. And the king, because of his past actions, because of his presumably very good past actions, was thought to be on a very high stage of this ladder. So really towards, you would say, the realm of divinity. And indeed was, and it is understood by many, to be a being somewhere in between the realms of human and the realm of deities.
Yeah. And yet, of course, he was saw himself as a very practical man too, very interested in development, quite down to earth. Let's walk a little bit over towards the main gate, because we might actually be able to get a bit of a glimpse inside the palace if we do that. I'm just going to see if we get, we've got a commentary actually here from somebody saying, where is this place? So let's remind you again, this is the Grand Palace. It is the spiritual heart of Bangkok. It is the center of the royal family, has been